Welcome to the Delight Your Marriage podcast, the show where you hear from amazing and inspiring wives sharing their struggles, triumphs, and advice for this journey called marriage. Here's your host, Bella Rose.
Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me. And hey, happy Father's Day, dear dads. I'm so grateful that you joined me on the call. I do want to mention before we dive in that if you have been hoping to ask your wife to have a clarity call with me, I have been offering those. This might be the perfect opportunity for you to ask her if she'd be willing to do that for a gift for you for Father's Day. That's actually been a really effective way for husbands to invite their wives to have either work with me or, have my book or those kinds of things. So I invite you to consider that. And a clarity call, just so you know, is actually a $500 value. I'm offering it for free right now. But it's really for me to speak with a wife or a husband even. I work with husbands as well. But to really dive deep into what's going on in your marriage and where you are and where you want to go. And if it feels like the right fit, I may invite you to actually work with me in one of my programs because by God's grace, I see incredible transformations in marriages. Now, on today's episode, I want to invite you to kind of sit back and relax and talk about maybe having your marriage transformed into an easygoing marriage. A lot of times in the Bible, it says peace, talks about peace and being a peaceful person. I think sometimes we can probably translate that into easygoing. And my husband and I are actually both on this episode, and he gives a lot of really good insight, and you'll be able to just hear from him almost on all sorts of different things, but you can pick out just really good nuggets throughout what he says. But we talk about really on this part, I've got 3 parts to this series I'm very excited about. But this first one, there's 5 keys in transforming your marriage to be more easygoing. And it's really a good thing to have an easygoing marriage. I think God can work through it quite a lot more. So let's go ahead and dive in. Hi there. Welcome. I'm so grateful you're joining. This is Bella Rose, and I actually have my husband here.
Hello, good morning.
If you're listening to this in the morning. If not,
good afternoon or good evening.
Thank you. So we wanted to talk about the value and some practical keys of being easygoing. Now, for me, this has not been part of my nature, honestly. And when we were talking about it, my husband looks at me and says, "You're easygoing." And I was quite surprised and grateful because that is not something that I grew up with or saw modeled either. So for me, my personality is a very strong, passionate personality with a lot of purpose behind what I feel that I should do. For a long time, most of my life, I had a 2-hour cap on anything I could do with that was pleasurable for me or something that was fun for me, because I felt like I needed to do something productive. So if I wasn't doing something productive for 2 hours, I would get antsy and I would have to go do something productive. I would have to learn something. I'd have to read a book. I'd have to process something intense. I'd have to, start praying, something really serious and intense, because, I'd be losing those 2 hours. And it wasn't until I was married with my husband that I guess when we were dating, he started pointing this out, and we would laugh because I might have been hanging out with my friends, and then we would look at the clock, and almost exactly 2 hours after arriving at, hanging out with my friends, I would have to leave and go do something important. And so I've had a road of something that was or wasn't productivity. So for me, it's very important to be productive. And I think that is a good quality. And I think a lot of people really value productivity, but sometimes they value it above peace in our hearts. And in your marriage, it's really important to be peaceful. And when you think about the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. How many of those can you accomplish when you are hurried and overzealous and unable to relax a bit? I mean, if you don't have any space in your life or in your heart or in your head, how in the world can you love well or be gentle? Because you're so focused on being productive and pushing yourself to the limits. You don't have space for that, to be kind. Are you kidding me? You got to get stuff done. So I want to encourage you and invite you today to recognize the value of being easygoing, and that things can slide, and God is the one that you can trust for your life to be okay. So maybe you have a business you want to start, or maybe you've got a lot of work to do. But what really is going to matter most in eternity? Well, I want to argue is that, or my point is, I don't actually want to argue, but my point is that peace is more important than in your marriage getting your point across, or being right, or being productive, or having things your way. Making sure that you and your spouse have a peaceful relationship is more important than all of those other things, because it allows you to do God's work better, because you're in a peaceful space. And you're kind to each other, and you're kind to those around you, and you invite each other, you invite your friends over, your neighbors, you're kind to your children. So I'm curious, husband, if you have any additions to that.
I keep thinking about when you said invite your neighbors or something. Maybe this is that I remember, a couple years ago on New Year's, that you just decided to invite some of our neighbors in our building. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know them. And our apartment is very tiny, so we're trying to invite everybody, but also not to squeeze and be comfortable. I don't know. That's one of the things that I keep thinking about what you did, and now we're friends, and we're friends of their friends, and
yeah, that's awesome. And to me, it feels like if we didn't have a lot of peace in our home, that wouldn't have even been a possibility, because we're too busy at each other's throats to even invite people to be loved by God.
You know what? I didn't look at the way that you look at now. Just like you said, that if we were like just mad at each other every day or once a week or something, that we can invite friends to our place, because we're just angry each other for some reason, something that it doesn't really matter, right? Because or the apartment, whatever it looks like, because we had kids, and they scratch they paint the walls, and it's just like we trying to act perfectly how we want the other people to see us, and instead of like to see us, we had kids just want to be toys, sometimes everywhere, and that's okay. If you don't understand us because you don't have kids, talk to other couples that had kids. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But also through that, you can bless other people, as also those people can bless you, because people are watching, whether for the good or for the bad. because they're always watching and they always say something, whether kind, without you even hear it, even all those kind things you would like to hear it. But a lot of times you hear those suggestions that you don't want to hear, you just want to feel that people can hear you, what you have to say. And living in New York City, there's a lot of people. Sometimes when I'm just walking on the street with my kids, some parents, or I'm assuming parents, or men and women, they say, you're such a great father, and without even knowing me, and I'm like, oh, and I'm happy to come here and talk to my wife about that. And I feel like, oh, there are people are watching that I can take care of my kids, and now they see me, my hope and pray that they will go and do the same thing with their kids or wives. That a lot of times that we don't do that anymore because we go focus on our phones. The reason why I said on our phones is because I think I'm too strict about phones to my kids watching that screen every day. And I think I'm way too strict about that. And my wife can talk about that.
Thank you, honey. No, he's awesome about that. It's I think it is a big problem in our society for kids to be on screens so much. So that's something, that my husband really doesn't allow, is for them to be on screens very much at all. So we're working out whether or not there's a balance there, because clearly mom's on the screen all the time for her work. So there's something to it. But anyway, we might have to have a little bit more conversation there off mic. But anyway, I think maybe that's even a good key, because I want to give you some real principles, that practical things that you can be thinking about when you think about how can you turn your marriage into something that's more easygoing. And one way is be playful. There's so much in life that you can turn into a joke. So much in my opinions, my thoughts, my understandings, that I can be playful with my husband, and it turns into a fun exchange rather than, something serious about screens and all this stuff. I mean, be playful. So that's number one. The second one I want to talk about is extend the timeline, because so often we think that we need to get things done quickly. And what that does is put pressure on the current situation. Listen, you've got tons of time. Life is not short. Life is long. Now, even if you're listening, and there are some listeners that are in their 60s or 70s, you still have tons of time. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, I mean, that is so much time left in life. And so don't feel like there's this ticking clock that you have to get all of your arguments figured out within the next, or disagreements figured out within the next even couple months or years. You can extend that timeline and you'll be so much more effective than if you did it, let's say, we really need to get this figured out by tomorrow, Instead, maybe have that first conversation, plant a seed tomorrow, and then have another good conversation in 2 weeks, and then have another good conversation in a month. And just think about even a conversation, if it's a disagreement, that can start out by one hint at a certain issues. So for example, about screens, if we gave that as an example, we had, some friends over last night, and their son was using the phone to look up endangered species, and he was drawing pictures from looking at a frog, for example. And it was very cool. And that was an opportunity that we could have a conversation with these other parents who are also very strict about screens, and say that their son can only be on a screen if they're in the room with the parents, and it's the parents' phone. So they've got to be able to see exactly what the son is doing. And the son is young, just like our kids. So it was really interesting. So that's a seed. And my husband and I can take that exchange and we can talk about it and talk about what do we want our kids to be doing. But that's not going to be my opportunity in that conversation to then get all of my thoughts out about screens, because that's not going to be productive. My husband may want to process for a while, and what he says to me, I may want to process for a while. So we don't have to get everything out on the table in one foul swoop. So think about extending that timeline when you're talking about disagreements. Do you have anything you want to add? I can keep going.
You can keep going.
Okay. The next thing that I wanted to mention is to rely on each other's strengths. And I talk about this a lot, but you and your spouse are extremely different, and God made you that way. So think about each other as really a complementary team. His strengths are your weaknesses, your strengths are his weaknesses. So consider you're like puzzle pieces fitting together to make the whole that God wanted you to be from the get-go. So don't assume that your strengths are better or his strengths are better. No, your weaknesses and strengths align and complement each other. You're equal halves of an entire whole. So, for example, again, with our friends that came over last night, my husband loves to cook. He loves to kind of be the doer. He is amazing at that aspect. He gets things accomplished while I sit and talk. So I'm very lucky that that's what he does. But anyway, I would encourage you to think about that, of what is your spouse's strengths, and rely on those things, and complement each other so you can do kingdom work better. The next thing I wanted to say was, feel free to touch my arm if you have something to say, and then I'll know. The next thing I was going to say was compliment and encourage each other. I think that's really important, because you want your spouse to know how much you enjoy and appreciate them. And that makes them calm, themselves, that you, so they can feel free to be themselves around you. Because if they feel like you don't like who they are, they can't have peace in their own heart. They can't feel like they can be all that they are. And I know in the past, for me, I felt like I was constantly striving to be someone I wasn't. I was constantly striving to change myself. I wasn't good enough. But by God's grace, my husband has really made me feel like I am free to be who I am. I'm free to be who God made me to be, and I'm appreciated for who God made me to be. And so compliments are huge. If you don't compliment your spouse, start today. Start making that a culture of your marriage. And the other piece of that is you have to start being able to receive compliments. I see that all the time in marriages, is that sadly, when one person compliments, the other person may either not respond or be like, oh, it's no big deal. It was just, it's just something I always do, or whatever. And what that does is it makes a kind of a prickly culture in your marriage, of where you're not receiving what the other person is giving. And then there's a block, and it kind of hurts the other person without realizing. You might think that you're even being humble, but you're not receiving. And that's vulnerable to receive a compliment. It's vulnerable to be given something and receive it, but it gives this softness between you two.
Yeah, I can add something to that. Looking at your notes when they say compliment, encourage each other, because a lot of times that we, as a husband and wife, we, just like you said, we don't compliment each other. A lot of times you're busy, and a lot of times you look at your spouse, and something that you like that she or he did, or say something and you like it, but you don't say like, oh, thank you for saying those things. Because I feel like, I don't really buy clothes, right? I don't really buy clothes. People donate clothes, and if they're my size, I'll wear them. If not, we'll donate those clothes. And one time I went to the store, and I not decided that moment that I want to buy some pens.
May I add that it was because all of his pants were ripped, aside from one pair of jeans, and I had already sewed the other pairs of pants, and they ripped a second time.
Yeah, that's true. So I feel like how can I not spend money, but also you can't fix those pens anymore. And I feel like, I tried on, and I didn't feel comfortable. Not that, just don't feel comfortable, but then I try some pens and I feel comfortable, but I see they're expensive. Expensive. When I'm talking about no more than $40, those are pens that I got them, and I feel like do I deserve this? I feel like because I haven't done that for a long time, like buying or treat myself, I guess you can say that. But I knew that I needed, and I bought them, and I liked them so much that I went to get another one. And I'm excited to tell my wife. I'm like, hey, look, I bought these pens, but I was looking for the compliment if she liked it or not, because I like it. She's like, oh, you look really good. And like I think for the last 3 days, they were like, I really like these pens. And she was like, I think that they look really good on you. They look really good on you. And when she says that she really likes the pens, whether she liked it or not, but I just want to look for that compliment. And if I hear that from my wife, I feel like I'm this model that is walking on the street, even I'm far, far away from that, but just me feeling inside insecure that my wife likes it, loves it, and I was looking for that compliment. But a lot of times that we are not looking for that compliment because we're trying to figure out something more serious in our marriage, in our relationship with our spouse. Compliment is far away from that. I feel like if you husband just compliment your wife, appreciate what she has done, what she's doing for her and for you, because remember, that's the image of our God. That's the as same as you, husband, you're the image of our God. It reflects you, what you do, what you say. You don't want it. I feel like you don't want to say negative stuff to your husband or wife, because she already heard so many times, whether in the past, whether her work or friends, that if, I just feel like that's enough. Just say something nice that you really like about her. You really like about him. And I feel like that's sometimes you just assuming that she likes it, that she knows that you like it, and but you don't say it. You don't say thank you, I appreciate that you say those things, what I did, because if you're like she noticed those things or he noticed those things, I keep thinking about a lot of times that husbands. I'm talking about husbands, right? Because I see, and I live in New York City, right? Like they don't really value and honor their wives, and they start saying some things about their wives with their friends. And I feel like, why would you say such a things with your friends? Why would you say that? And you want to live with your wife. Like, what did you do when you first saw her? When you first saw him, and then you years or months, whatever, you go and hang out with your friends, and then start talking about how your house is, is miserable. that you're not happy there. What happened? What happened there? And I feel like, just, aren't you grateful that your wife choose you? Like, she can choose anyone else, but she choose you. Like, there is a saying that if there's food that you don't want it, someone else want it, and you're not complimenting your wife, someone else is looking at your wife like she's the most beautiful lady. She's the most beautiful lady, and they're not want to say, or at least some of them, they're not want to say, like, you're how lucky you are, you have a wife like that. A lot of men won't say that because because we don't want to think or feel that, is my friend got a crush on my wife because he's saying something nice about my wife. But wife can say that, but I feel like men, especially those men that are very very jealous, have the problem, because I had that problem before. Man, that is not life. That is like painful inside of you and in your wife. Your wife is not being authentic to you. She's not want to be 100% for you because she's afraid to act the way you act before. I feel like the reason why I talk mostly about husbands is because I see husbands so much disrespect their wives and just like screaming on the street. I'm like, why are you screaming on the street? What are you trying to show to everybody, that you're the man of the house by screaming on the street to respect your wife? Because the way that you talk to your wife, whether if you're right, I feel like I keep thinking about this image, like if every man will give birth to one child, man, you appreciate more your wife, because the painful that they had to go through, the pain that they had to go through, not just give birth. No, forget about the first trimester. That's when a lot of like hormones start moving around, and then you get tired of it, that you don't want to deal with that wife like that. And she's trying to deal with her body, that she can't help it. It's just part of the creation of our God that is making that happen. If you're not into that, like if you're not close to that, like step by step, side by side with her, look at the pain that she got to go through. But she won't complain. But you're complaining about your job, because I had complained about my job, about my jobs, because I had 2 jobs. And I wanted to quit my jobs because I didn't want to handle that. And, my wife, she was like, how did you think about it? They don't want to, lose you. You're a hard worker. They don't want to lose you. And then I could think about, like, you're right. And I like what I do. I work, and I put my 100% every time I start in those jobs. And I want to put more than my 100% with my wife, with my family, because I feel like that's not a job that people say that I'm doing all this job. I feel like you choose that responsibility. It's not a job, because I feel like a job you get paid. I feel like responsibility is like things that you had to do, and you choose that way, and you choose that image of God, that weight of God has put you. And if you're looking for gaining something back, I feel like you're ended up more in pain, not you, for you're going to hurt more the other person and your kids. Man, we have so many friends that we had like their babies, right? They're newborn babies, and then they're not even a year old, and then they separated. They separated. And I feel like husbands, I feel like, why? Like, why? Because the hormones in their ladies, they're so much, not need, it's just so much that their body wants it, something. And we can explain, but we have some, it's just painful when to see single moms, they had to deal with the babies and child support and this whole thing, and the husbands, they get to easy way because they not give birth to that child. They see it, but they cannot experience it. And we always complain about, yeah, but it's her, she, they did or say something. But I feel like just sit calm and look how your wife just went through. Just give a life out of, life. Like that poor little child, right? I feel like sometimes when we're trying to do something, celebrate something, we had to figure out how we can invite our parents because they're divorced and we don't want them to bring their spouse because the relationship did not end well. And we don't have that awkwardness in front of our children. So sometimes we feel like we don't want to invite our families. We'd rather just invite our friends. And I feel like if your husband can just being blessed to your family, and just look at your kid's eyes. Look at your kid's eyes, innocent, don't know anything about this world, but you know so much about this world, about how much of the pain you had caused, how much of the pain people have caused to you, and you want to leave with that generation about compassion, to love one another, and to not went through what you went through, by loving. And it's okay. Like sometimes, we get mad, we get frustrated with our kids because they just want our attention. Give your child attention. Maybe you didn't have that attention when you grew up, and that a lot that you get it that a lot, and you pass it on to your kids. But we're not aware of that. And let's pass it all the positive things to our kids, not those things that we went through with our child. Like we wish that our parents did this for us, say these things for us, give a kiss for us. For example, my parents. My dad never kissed me on the cheek and never hugged me that I remember. Never. And I feel like I'm a little too much with my kids because I hug them and kiss them too much that they tell me like, Papi, I did not ask you to kiss me. And I'm sorry, buddy. Can I give you a kiss? He's like, yes, but just a little bit. I'm like, okay, that's enough. Because I feel like I don't, like sometimes we're too much. Sometimes we, we give our kids something that we didn't have. A lot of technologies, right? And I seen,
yeah, that's a good point.
I seen like kids for like 10 years old. They have those brand new Galaxy phones, iPhone, whatever, right? And I just have this, some as our friends in our church, hey, if you don't want any old phones, we can use them. And then we use them. And then we see these 10-year-old kids have those the newest iPhones that I think it costs more than $1,000 because their parents, our parents, did not give us what we have, so we give that to our children. And I feel like, to me, that's we bring into our kids to our completely crash in their lives because they don't know where that thing's coming from, and they don't know how hard it is to get it, because you got to pay for insurance to that. So you got to pay that. And of course, parents have to pay that. You're not going to find a 7-year-old paying for that phone completely, I mean, my kids, sometimes they get excited when they find a coin on the ground, and then they collect it, and then we go to a dollar store and they buy their toy, whatever, but they collect it. And I feel like, it's easy for me to just give them $3 for $1 that they can get it. But I feel like they had to work for it. I'm not saying work for it, like you gotta do something. I'm like, think about it. Like sometimes we go to, it's your son or your birthday, right? And then some people, they give toys, some clothes, some of them they give $20, right? And then that $20 you save them for I mean, at least we do. I save for my kids, and then we're like, oh hey, and they know, they're aware now. They're like, but this person give me money. They don't know how much it is, and then we're like, okay, so you buy whatever you want on this one toy, and then you pick it, and then you get change, and you put her on the on the jar or whatever. But anyway, I feel like just about encouraging husbands. Man, just encourage your wife. Love who she is, what she is. Because I feel like, just what my wife is saying, like sometimes my weakness is that she can see it and she can help me through that. On her weakness, the same thing as I can do that to her. Because sometimes when we were dating, we were like, but she's not, I keep thinking of it in my head. I can't help it. That, she asked for advice to her family. I said, but this man that I like him so much, but he's not blah 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 this, and of course the family just wanted the best for her, and they say like, well, he has 2 jobs, but he doesn't have a career. And when I think about jobs and career, they said a career, which means mostly whether lawyer, like a higher pay person, with you had to dress something nice. And I had 2 jobs that I don't have to wear nice. I just had to wear the clothes and shoes that are not supposed to look, they're $200, and now that I talk about sometimes me and my wife, it's like, thank God that we are different. We are different. Because we cannot marry to lawyers, to presidents, to CEOs. Because now we start compete to each other. You're making more money, you're making less money. You got more savings, I got less savings. All those things, and then like you're ended up. I mean, I feel like hurting each other. And I'm not saying out for all of us, because there's some teachers married to teachers, but not work in the same classroom, if I can explain, But I mean, I feel like it's okay, and that's wonderful if they like it, they love it, and man, I'm go for that. But if you had to recognize their weakness to one another and their strength to one another, so you can help each other. Because sometimes I feel like I cannot do this, and my wife is like, but you've done this before, and and then I started looking about myself. I'm like, yeah, I think I can do it, but she needs to, not that she needs to see that, but I feel like she sees that, and then she helps me to see that I can do better, or I can do that thing because I've done it before. But I feel like just husbands may just encourage your wives. Just encourage and tell her what you like about her. Starting today, tomorrow. Today, I will say it. Because we don't know what's tomorrow. We don't have the insurance that we had for our cars tomorrow. If we crash our cars tomorrow, we don't have cars. But if you have a cars tomorrow, and then you crash, and then insurance pay, right? Us, we don't have the insurance of our lives. We have the insurance of our life for eternal life for our God. So start say something kindly to your wife about what you like about her, what you like in her body, what you like that she did yesterday or today. Or you like her eyes, her hair, her lips, something. My wife is, because I tell her a lot about lips and the eyes. But just encourage to your wife, man. I feel like we lost that so many of those things because we're focused about our jobs. Even I can't help it. Just looking at the reviews of my wife on the podcast, right? That there is one person that has said like, I don't like this, blah, 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 about this. I think she's promoting about this. The reason why she's saying about porn addiction is because no one talks about it. No one talks about it. And if you go to a church, maybe one time we'll talk about your church, your pastor, because no one talks about it. And it's not like promoting, is but for you to be aware that no one talks about it. And if you can start talking about with your spouse, with your kids, your addictions, because I had that addiction before, and if I can talk openly with my kids about about that, not addictions because they don't know about that, but something that it could affect them. I feel like with that person that I forgot what it's saying, but something like maybe you don't like about this, and thank you so much for even saying those things, because some other people, they left a review that they said for this person that it says that is not actually, I don't know exactly, but kind of like no one talks about it. And some wives, they even mention when they leave a review about encouraging, like, Bella, thank you so much for doing all the job that you do, because a lot of people, a lot of us, we don't want to do that kind of job, that what you do, because no one wants to talk about it. We can always leave as someone, someone has to say, someone has to call, someone has to say, because I can't say it, right? I'm sure someone will say. And if you had that review to encourage it, you think that my wife don't see the reviews. Sometimes she, I look at the reviews over and over again. And I tell my wife all this, positive things, and I feel like that helps so much to spread another marriage, another mother, another father, another son that's about to get married. And, like it helps so much. But, there's always someone that is not happy, and I feel like, you had the best experience. Whatever you did, you had the best experience, right? Like, I wish everybody can experience this. But there's someone who said, I had a terrible experience, and leave a bad review, right? And you're like, what? It was amazing, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't for that person, for that couple, for that family. But why we had to say this negative stuff? Like, okay, you didn't like it. But, there's always someone. Whether your job, your neighborhood, friends, there's someone's that you disagree. And I feel like that's the, sadly, that's our nature, that sometimes we like it. We start saying those things that we don't know that person works so hard for that job, for that business, right? Put their families, that sacrifice their things. And then they're trying to accommodate you and trying to say like all those wonderful things, right? But and then yet someone will say like, no, it's not good enough. And and that family like, oh man, we're 100%, and there's still people are not happy with it, because there want to be people they're not happy with. We always need more. We always want more. And I feel like if we focus more on the positive things that what God has blessing us, and I feel like that you start seeing the beauty around you, just walking on the street, like you get to see it, that a lot of people can't see it, that you get to hear it, that you get to hear that a lot of people cannot hear it, that they wish they can hear what you're saying, but they cannot hear it, that you can smell, that you can speak,
All right. Well, we are going to pick up here where we've left off. Just a quick summation of what we've talked about so far with the easygoing qualities and ways that you can proactively insert them into your marriage is: number 1, be playful. Number 2, extend the timeline. Number 3, rely on each other's strengths. Number 4, compliment and encourage each other. And my husband was kind enough to share quite a lot about that. And the final one is he just began speaking about gratitude, which is humongous in maintaining an easy marriage and a peaceful, calm, joyful life and home. It's gratitude. So great. Well, talk to you soon.